Okay. Well, you have a Christian Orthodox. She's Orthodox Christian mother,
Yes.
and okay, and you have a Muslim Shia non-practicing father.
Yes.
And so, did you study Islam at all? You know, as a practical faith growing up.
I didn't study Christianity or Islam at all. My first exposure to faith was when I started to read the Bible when I was around 35. And the reading was very quick. It wasn't deep. I didn't really get anything out of it except the basic stories and the basic outline. So really, I've learned more about Islam as a Christian than before because a lot of people who follow me are Muslim. I have quite a few friends who are Muslim. Half of my family is Muslim. So I kind of wanted to know what they believe and what the differences are.
Okay. So, what came from that? What came from that studying that you have done recently?
So, I mean, our faiths aren't the same. We both believe in God. That's a good start. I mean, that's in this age, if you have someone who believes in God, I mean, that is really not that bad. You can work off of that. But yeah, I mean, I from what I can tell, the Muslims believe that Jesus Christ was a prophet, one of many prophets that God sent, but I believe that he was God in the flesh. So I know that I've seen a lot of debates online on the Holy Trinity. Muslims don't believe in that, and they provide their arguments why it's wrong and on and on. But I do believe in that. So from that belief, the differences in faith are going to come out. And, I don't know what to say about it, but I can tell you that when I turned to Christ, I have a stepmom. She is a Persian stepmom, very devout Muslim. She prays 5 times every day. And after I turned to Christ, more than my own mom and dad, I have been able to identify with her, get along with her even better because she practices. She prays to God just like I do. And these days, that's hard to find. So I try to focus on the common ground. But yeah, once you get into it, the differences could be major. And my sense is I do the best to share the faith that I have with people. It's up to you whether you want to look into it or not. But at the end, once we're gone here, God is going to tell us, as God is going to judge us, whether we followed him correctly or not. So I try not to judge people in that way.
So, I know this is kind of personal, but was there something before you had become a Christian and you were still investigating? Was there something that clinched it for you to become Orthodox Christian?
So really, it wasn't a logical decision I made. I remember when I was kind of searching in the darkness. My life was completely dark. I had lived as an adult man. Every road I took that I thought would benefit me ended in a bad way. My sister was gone. I didn't know why. So I decided to pray. And when I decided to pray, and the first time I prayed, I received what I believe was God's grace, where I felt like my life had changed. Um, when I did pray, I didn't even kind of know what I was saying, but tears were coming down my eyes. I knew at that moment something happened. But for me, it was intuitive then that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. So I didn't look into the books and say, is Islam the right one or is Christianity the right one? As they say in the Orthodox Church, the gospel is written in our hearts. So for me, it was kind of unlocking what the heart already knew, but I didn't do this intellectual back and forth. It just seemed to be the intuitive choice.
So, okay. It was intuitive, like that it was
It was
Jesus, like
intuitive.
you're praying
Yeah,
to
it
God.
was it was intuitive in the sense that the basic understanding that I knew of God, that God sent Jesus Christ to redeem our sins, was how it was how it had to be. This story, I guess you can say in the modern world, word clicked. It just made complete sense when you account for the story of Christianity and why God sent his son here, that I didn't doubt it. So why didn't I doubt it? I can try to explain it to you, but this is why I use the word intuitive. It just, to me, it seemed like this is it.
Okay, so you had some previous exposure to Christianity through your mom, and you had those ideas, and then in that moment, it just clicked for you. You felt that this was the right decision for you.
So one thing we can ask, was the decision for Christ, was it because I was, say, raised in a somewhat of a Christian country? My mom was Christian, though she didn't teach anything to me. Or was it an internal matter of the heart, where you recognize Christ as the Son of God? Now, I can't tell you for sure. I'm sure the Muslims watching will say, well, it's because you were raised in the United States and you were living in Europe, Catholic countries, and so on. But to me, it seemed like the very obvious choice. But
yeah. So, and there was one live stream where someone asked you a similar question, or you're just talking about this conversion experience, and you mentioned that one of the things that you had difficulty with as a new Christian was praying to Mary, the mother of Christ. And you had trouble with praying to her as opposed to God directly. I wouldn't say
difficulty. I would say that I didn't feel the need to.
Okay.
So it isn't that I tried to pray to her, but I couldn't. It's just that I didn't feel the need to.
But is that a part of Orthodox Christianity to
Yes, it is. So I have, since then, things have changed. It took about a year when I started to feel the desire to pray to her. And so that is, I would say, it's a little bit bigger in the Catholic Church, but in the Orthodox Church, we do venerate her. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the thing. You like Muslims watching this are, okay, pulling out their hair or pulling at their beard, saying, "Why doesn't Roosh just become Muslim?" Because he has all of these ideas that are completely in line with Islam in terms of the nature of the world, the dunya, the nature of our relationship to God and our need for Him, and that there's no real salvation outside of what God has set for you. And those who turn their backs on God, they're going to suffer from that choice. So Muslims, you have, as you mentioned, Muslims who watch your stuff and read your writing, and they're just pulling out their hair. I've experienced this. I have very close family members who have experienced this, saying, why isn't Roosh Muslim? And it comes down to this issue of like worshiping God versus, okay, is God embodied in Jesus Christ? Because you know that how much Muslims love Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, and his mother as well. And this is a very big part of Islam, and we believe that Jesus Christ is going to descend and return back to earth and actually defeat the Antichrist and bring, the only kind of utopia that humanity will experience before the end of times is from Jesus Christ coming and defeating. That's why he's the Messiah. He's the Masih in Arabic, the anointed one, the chosen one. So this, I'm just letting you know, like my, to be very real with you and forward and honest. This is what we feel when we hear Roosh talking about these things.
But couldn't I use that same argument with you guys and say, why don't they just accept Jesus Christ as the Son of God? I could use that same argument. Christ came. He came, and history was revealed to be about him. He is the center of it. He is the center of it. Then 500-600 years later, there was a new revelation in the desert, which, was something different. But really, it seemed to take some components of Christianity into it. So I would say, if you look at the timing of it, it would say that Christianity was there. Some people didn't want to accept it, maybe, and they made something different, something new that had shades, elements of it. So it would seem, just from the timing, that maybe Islam, and I don't want to, offend anyone who is watching, but just looking at the timing, that maybe Islam is a derivative of what Christianity brought, but in a simpler way. I admit the Holy Trinity is hard for some people to understand. It was too hard for some. So they just said, let's just dump that. We just want God, only God. We don't want to worry about that. So I believe that's where Islam came. But yeah, I could say the same thing about you guys. When are you going to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? You already believe in him as a prophet, so it wouldn't be a large step.
It would be much larger to go from thinking someone as a prophet to worshiping them as God embodied. But there is a big difference in one aspect, because what you said is that for you it was mainly intuitive and it was actually not logical. But Muslims, like, we're logically committed, we're rationally, like, that's an important part. Like when you read the Quran, God is constantly saying that this is for people who reflect, this is for people who ponder the message that there is only one God and he has no partners and there is nothing like him. There's nothing resembling him. He's not a created being. He is the creator of all beings. And he has sent messengers one after another through time. And, people have killed the messengers. They have blasphemed against God and rejected the messengers. And there's a series, and Jesus Christ, Moses, Adam, Noah, Abraham. These were the major prophets, but there are many. And then Muhammad was the final messenger, who brought the complete message with the final book. There's also many books, including Jesus's gospel, the gospel of Jesus Christ. But anyway, I don't want to get into a theological debate.
One thing, no, that's fine. Well, one
to
thing,
respect your.
Sure, that's one thing I just wanted to say is when you asked me how I came to the faith, there's a couple ways. I mean, if you look at the testimonies of how people came to God, and I'm sure if you talked about yours, usually it's either they came through the mind or through the heart, or a combination. For me, it was purely through the heart. That's why I use the word intuitive. It was a heart thing because my heart was broken. It was broken. So God came to me through the heart, spoke to me in that way, which is surprising because I'm a pretty intellectually minded guy, very book smart or what have you. But now to explain to you the faith of Christ through the mind for me is difficult because I didn't experience it in that way. So if you want to get to, say, the logic of Christ, why God had to come, you have to talk to a guy like J. Dyer. J. Dyer, I'm sure you know him. I mean, he can explain all that stuff. But me, I can just explain to you how I came to the faith in a somewhat practical way, in a somewhat simple way. I mean, I wasn't reading books. I didn't know what the Holy Trinity really was and understand it. But when I felt God, and we all feel him in different ways, Christ was at the center. And people, I don't expect you or your audience to agree with it. I didn't come here to convert people, but I'm just telling you, I don't want you to think that, he doesn't want to learn the truth of the faith and the logic of it. No, after I experienced the faith through the heart, that's when, some of the books, I don't know if you can see now, I'm starting to dive into it, so that maybe in a couple years, let's say if you invite me back on, if you're not banned, I'm sure we can get a little bit deeper, right? But when a child knows how to walk, he can't explain to you the physics of walking. He can hardly tell you why he's moving one foot in front of the next. So it's me. I'm walking and I feel great. I'm walking. I hope that God thinks in a good way, but I can't really explain to you specifically how I am doing it. But as I get older, as my faith grows, I'm sure I will be able to.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Like, it's not, you weren't saying that your faith is illogical. You just meant intuition in a very specific way. But yeah, intuition, I mean, if we talk about intuition, I also, before I became formally religious and practicing, I did have intuitions, like an intuitive attraction to faith. I always considered myself a Muslim, but I also intuitively felt that it was that God exists, and He's the truth. And so that sense of intuition, I think scientifically it's been shown that the majority of children have that actually. Like you ask children, like, who created the mountains, who created the ocean, they'll say God, even if they don't necessarily have a religious culture or even a concept of a creator in their culture. They'll still say this mountain was created by God. So this is completely contradicts what atheists will say, is that no, religion is something implanted. But the research doesn't show that. You ask these 4 or 5-year-olds who created the mountain, they don't say no one knows, or they don't say, oh, it just came about by itself. They say God, without even necessarily having a concept of a creator God in their religion. But I mean, that they also don't say it was Jesus Christ, or they don't, like the child in China or in Japan or Africa is not saying Jesus Christ. They're saying God. And I think it's like happens to be a very an answer that coincides with Islam's understanding and Islam's teaching on God. But anyway, when in a couple of years, if I'm not banned and you've got your bona fides in terms of Orthodox theology, we can talk. Maybe by then you'll...
Sure, but I mean, if we believe Jesus Christ is God, when a child says, "I believe in God," Jesus Christ is part of the Godhead, but he needs to be taught. He needs to be revealed exactly how God has a plan for the salvation of him and the world. But yeah, I mean, does it have to be intuitive 100%? Where, okay, let's do an experiment where a man is grown in a cave with the wolves and he has never encountered a book or anything. What is his belief system is going to be on? I'm pretty sure that God intended us to be taught. That's why he sent the prophets. You have the books, whether Quran or the Bible. So it's okay to be taught. It doesn't have to be intuitive in the sense of there is a God, that's all I need to know. So he does reveal things to us.
Hindus say that God is...
They believe in a lot of gods.
No, but they think that there is a Godhead. Okay, it depends on what kind of Hindu you ask. But they'll say that there's one Godhead, Brahman, and then there are different manifestations or avatars, such as Shiva, right, or Brahma, and so forth. But there is one main Godhead. And so they'd say also that people are just born with this intuition about God existing. But when you ask the children to describe God, they say, and I can point you to the studies. There's one that I was reading from an Oxford researcher, Olivera Petrovich. And she asked the Japanese children from Shinto backgrounds, they don't have a concept of God as a creator, to describe who created Mount Fuji? It was God. Okay, describe God. And they'll say basically a person that doesn't have a body, like an invisible person, maybe like a gas or something abstract like that. But they won't say like it was a 8-armed person, blue-skinned figure, or a bearded man. They won't have those kinds of descriptions. But yeah, I mean, this is very interesting to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. I know that the Hindus, they believe, from what I know, they believe in multiple different gods. The problem is trying to understand the logic of God is going to be difficult, but the logic of what Orthodox Christians believe is 1 + 1 + 1 = 1. Can we compute that? I mean, do we really expect we're going to understand God totally? I mean, probably not. So I do believe that. I do believe 1 + 1 + 1 = 1. And the Muslims who are watching, I'm sure, is like, no, wait, that's 3. But so anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Well, at the end of the day, guidance is through God, and God is ultimately the one who guides everyone to the straight path. So I'm just expressing my hope And my invitation and the hope, before we continue in the interview, that you've been God-pilled. We're hoping that you'll be Islam-pilled very soon.
You know, one thing I tell people is if you believe I'm in the wrong church or faith, then you can pray